My brother and I have a story that happened during the day, and we're both positive what we saw was a skinwalker. Here's what happened. We were staying in Wenatchee in Washington State. It's kind of eastern, but not really. Like, it wants to be eastern, but it's not. Anyhow, we were staying with my friend's family whilst my parents were out of state. My friend's mom, I'll call her Tammy, says to me, "We would get your brother. Dinner's ready." To which I replied, "Where is he?" My friend, I'll call her Emily, goes, "I think he's by the river." So I said, okay, and went to go get him. I crossed the backyard, which is really a field, and prepared myself to go down a stupidly steep hill. The only way to get down the hill was to keep your foot planted on some rocks. It's either that or you fly down. I got down the hill and say my brother just chilling on a swing thing. You know, the swings with 2 or 3 seats on them? Those things. I stood behind for a minute, planning to push the swing a little and scare him. But I heard my name being called. So, naturally, I turned around, thinking it was Emily calling me or something. No one on the field. I had and still have a pretty active imagination, so I just brushed it off. I turned back to the swing, and my brother was standing up now. His eyes were fixed across the river, so I looked over too. We saw a deer-looking thing standing on its back legs, and I again was just like, oh, it's my imagination again. I looked away for a few seconds, then turned back. My brother was now shaking. He still hadn't even noticed me. The deer guy was still there, but its mouth was moving. It was saying my name. I just could barely make it out, but it was saying my name. It started to shake as well. My brother turned around, ready to run back to the house, and yelled when he saw me. This was the following conversation between us. "What happened? Did you see it too? The deer?" "It wasn't a deer. I don't know what that thing was, but it was not a deer." "Was it calling my name to you?" "No, it was calling my name." "We can talk about it later, but I was sent to go get you 5 minutes ago. Dinner's ready." And I know I said I have a very active imagination, but the part that scares me is that my brother does not, and he saw exactly what I saw. And so we went inside and ate dinner, and said nothing of it. We had both relaxed for the most part by this time we got back to the house, and we texted each other about it after, so nobody would know but us. About a year after the happening, my brother came into my room and said, "Hey, remember that deer thing we saw in Wenatchee a few years ago?" I told him I thought about it frequently, and what he said actually scared me so bad, I thought I was going to go into cardiac arrest. He goes, "Well, I've done some major research, and we could have died if we went near it. Turns out it was a skinwalker." And he continued to tell me about skinwalkers and what they do. I'm not getting into it, but every now and again, we both share a look when someone starts talking about stuff like wendigos and skinwalkers, urban legends and creepypasta, stuff like that, and neither of us had said anything about it. But my brother decided to tell my dad, who grew up with urban legends and stuff like that, and he also thinks it's a skinwalker. I can still see that evil thing's face every time I hear about wendigo and skinwalker encounters. My brother got a kind of mental effect from this thing. Effect, I don't even know what to call it. I don't want to say it's like PTSD, but certain things around the topic will trigger him. He'll constantly have nightmares about it, and he doesn't like talking about it, unless he initiates the conversation. I'm a little more thick-skinned around the topic of scary things, but it scared me into thinking I was going to die on the spot. We haven't been back to Wenatchee. Up in Cave Creek, I was out cruising on some trails late at night in my 4x4 4Runner, kind of exploring the desert off of the Carefree Highway, when I spotted some deer with my light bar, so I followed them, which is the short version. I followed them into a canyon and lost sight of them, and as I was getting ready to leave, 3 of the deer bolted past me, coming towards me, and in the opposite direction they were heading. And, like a dumbass, I didn't think anything of it, and turned around and followed them, trying to get a picture. As I was trying to catch up to them, I glanced to my right. I have spotlights facing off both sides to light up the left and right of my truck. About 20 feet off the trail, there was a large figure, I'd say about 8 feet tall, sprinting next to me. It looked skinny and naked. Whatever it was looked to be out of human descent, and I didn't look too long because it freaked me out, and I slammed on the gas to get out of there. Debating on posting the longer version, and I could also link the location of the canyon if you'd like. My best guess, it was a skinwalker or something, but needless to say, I don't go there at night anymore. I have a story. It isn't mine, but it happened to my uncle. He used to tell this story when we went camping, and it scared the lights out of me every time I heard it. We live in Utah, and my uncle, Mark, went on a mission at 19. They sent him to an Indian reservation in Arizona. They paired him up there with a companion named Carl. When they first got there was a huge rift with the locals on the reservation with them being there. They didn't want my uncle and Carl staying on the reservation grounds. Eventually, they came to a compromise that they would stay on the outskirts in a trailer. This reservation wasn't very big and was located next to a heavily wooded area. The first night, they were trying to all sleep when all of a sudden, their trailer started to shake violently back and forth. Startled and not sure what was happening, they climbed under the table for cover. Mark could distinctly hear somebody pushing it from both sides of the trailer, like a group of people. After about 5 minutes, it stopped. That next day, they made rounds on the reservation and were talking to the locals. Carl made a comment to one of the families that their trailer was shaking that night before. The family got very quiet and then told them that they had to leave. They thought it was strange but didn't think much of it. The next night it happened again. They awoke to their trailer shaking back and forth. Again, they climbed under the table until it stopped. This went on for about 2 more nights. Anytime they tried to talk to anyone about it, they got quiet and told them to leave. Mark started thinking that, due to the tension of their arrival, the locals were doing this to scare them off the reservation. They then go into a convenience store and they were talking together about how frustrated they were in the situation. The clerk overheard and said, "They can't talk about it. It's forbidden." Confused, they asked him, "Can't talk about what?" The guy continues to tell them about skinwalkers. He says they are evil demons that were once Native American witches. If they talk about it, the skinwalkers will come for their souls. They just walked out of there, baffled. They thought it was another scare tactic. So, that night, when the shaking started again, my uncle decided to be brave and confront them. He went to the trailer door, flew it open, and yelled, "Hey!" When he did that, he saw these 3 animals run off. 2 were a wolf, 1 was a bear, but they looked strange, almost with human features. As he watched them run towards the tree, all 3 of them stood up on 2 legs and walked slowly towards the trees, making a human cackling laugh. It scared him so bad that they called their mission president the next morning and asked to be moved. They were relocated that same day. For a year, nothing happened. One day, they announced that Carl was being relocated to another city, and Mark was getting a new companion, Jimmy. They had to drive for about an hour to pick Jimmy up from the airport. The road they traveled went through the boundaries of the reservation. They arrived at about 8 p.m. and met Jimmy, and they go to leave. The mission president tells Jimmy, "We are driving through a dangerous area at night, so we can't make any stops. If you need to use the restroom, you need to go now," Jimmy says. "I'm fine. The mission president gets serious enough to even freak out Mark. "I'm not kidding. Go do your business." Jimmy was insistent he was fine, so they hit the road. As they were about 30 minutes into the drive, they were going through the area of the reservation boundaries. Jimmy starts complaining that he needed to pee badly. The mission president says, "We can't stop here. You're just going to have to hold it." Jimmy keeps going on. "I really can't hold it." So the mission president stops the car and says, "Okay, but you will do your business next to the door. And if I say get into the car, you better get into the car fast." With a look of confusion, Jimmy just says, "All right," opens the door, and starts to do his business. About 5 seconds later, the mission president says nothing and just yanks Jimmy into the car and floors it. Jimmy and Mark start freaking out. "What's going on?" The mission president says nothing and just increases his speed. All of a sudden, Mark sees something next to the car to his right. A giant wolf-looking man was running on 2 feet next to the car. Mark looked at the speedometer. They were going well over 60 miles an hour and still increasing. The wolf creature kept right next to the car for 10 minutes until it finally took off into the trees. Shaking, Jimmy gets out of the car when they arrive. They didn't speak through the whole ordeal and says, "What did I just see?" The mission president says, "Next time I tell you to take care of your business, you take care of your business." I just seen a question on here asking about a positive encounter, and I have one I would like to share. Though may not be what I thought. About 20 years ago, after I graduated high school, I used to run traps to make extra money in the wintertime. Since I was pregnant with my daughter, any sort of extra income was necessary, since trapping is frowned upon, oddly. Anyway, my father had always told me about the creek I trapped in as being quite strange. We would always walk the creek to collect arrowheads and look for other Shawnee relics. So he would tell me stories about the Shawnee Native American tribe and their history and folklore. It was a very special spot to us, so when I began trapping, my father would tell me to have respect for the wildlife. Don't litter, kill humanely, and don't kill what doesn't need to be killed. So, I built a great deal of appreciation to life, which led to my career in conservation. The only reason I state these things is to build context as to why I did what I did. About once a week, while walking up the creek, I would hear whistling, like a human but in random patterns, and that would be along with the smell of sulfuric and rotten eggs, which my dad told me was most likely a Bigfoot or a skunk ape, and sightings had occurred as long as he could remember in our area. Then, one time I was scanning down the tree line with my binoculars to check to see if I had any coyotes and foxes in my traps to save me the walking time. I seen a fairly medium-sized tree swing dramatically a little past the tree line. So I headed over there with my .22, hoping to sneak up on a bobcat or any animal that was medium-sized my .22 could kill with a headshot. About 3/4 of the way to the tree line, the swaying had stopped, and I didn't see anything, but at least 2 of whatever it was began whistling and whooping further back in the forest. I continued to head up the creek, and it always stayed somewhat behind me at a distance, but never left. That was pretty interesting. Then, one day, sadly an oil fracking company purchased most of the land. They still gave me permission to trap, but they had a few accidents where the water got so damn nasty, it killed just about everything. It broke my heart to see beavers, muskrats, and some coons floating down the creek every time I went. But after they had installed their rigs and cleared some forest things, got a little hostile. One day, running traps, almost all my traps had been ruined, bent, beaten, and broken. And the remained animals I had caught were either stolen, ripped from the trap with their foot or leg still attached, and I even found a coyote that had been messed up bad. Fur torn, broken lower jaw, head beaten in. I felt like this was in retaliation to what the oil company had done, and I was being blamed. But it is positive. For a few months afterwards, I would go to the store twice a week and buy a variety of apples, pears, and a mixture of meat from carcasses I had skinned, put it in a basket, and leave it in the forest, hoping whatever it was would get it before anything else. Sometimes the basket would disappear, but always in 2 days, everything was gone. One day, I believe it left me a present in return. Next to where I dropped off the basket, there was about 100 plus small sticks stacked very neatly, about 20 acorns and a deer antler. It made me feel happy. I do hope that I did help this creature out in its very sad moments of life, though it may have been everything but a Bigfoot or skunk ape, because I never physically seen it or any tracks in the creek bed. But all of my occurrences happened in the woods along the creek, so I really don't know. So still to this day, 20 years later, I think of it time to time, and I don't see a reason why people should be afraid of them. It was a sad but positive 2 winter seasons with it. Even if it was an animal I didn't recognize, I hope I helped. This happened when I was really young. I was around 6 to 9 years old. A little backstory. I had a significant trauma happen to me when I was 6. I don't want to go into details, but it made life difficult for a while. I totally shut down for a bit, and sleep at the time was my only safe haven. For the next couple of years after my incident, my dreams got stranger and stranger. I at first only saw them in the background of my dreams, like part of the scenery almost. Then, I began to lucid dream. All of a sudden, these dark shadow people with red eyes began to manifest in my room. I never felt danger from them, and that gave me a sense of relief. I would talk to them like they were someone I knew, and I would tell them about my day. A lot of times, these conversations would end because they would hear something and move off my bed. I would wake from my semi-asleep state by trying to go after them. Towards the end of my encounters with these creatures, I got a sense of terror, and I could never pinpoint it until one night, a white figure came through my door and reached out with a knife toward me. I woke up with a jolt and never saw any of them again, though I will sometimes see one of them dart out of my vision. A few years ago, I used to have to do a long drive from northern Illinois down to western Kentucky about twice a month. I had gotten to the point where I knew the drive like the back of my hand. Sometimes it was actually a lot better to make the drive early evening and to do a bulk of the 9-hour drive through the night, getting me there about 1:30 a.m. to 2 a.m. No traffic, and in the summer, it was relaxing to drive with all the windows down. After crossing into Kentucky, there was about 2 hours of road without even highway lights. But, like I said, I'd done it so many times before. One of my last trips, I'd been heading down that stretch, and I had my brights on. In the distance on my driver's side of the shoulder, I could see what I thought was a deer. Got a little closer, and I realized it was a wolf. Now, I'm coming up on this, and it's on all fours, but its back had to be almost level with the roof of my sedan. I thought, holy cow, that thing's huge. Now, I'm doing probably 80 miles an hour, and I swear we lock eyes. I could feel him looking directly at me. I'm getting closer and closer. Now I can actually see his teeth. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was an actual animal. Then, as I'm probably 50 feet from this thing, about to pass it on the driver's side shoulder, it stood up on 2 legs, still staring directly into my eyes. I passed, and the rest of the drive I tried to figure out what I had seen, or should I loop back? I never told anyone that story, because most people would just say, oh, it was late, your mind was messing with you. But still, to this day, I won't forget how long that stare down was. I can't help but think I didn't catch him by surprise. More like he wanted to see me and help him. If he really wanted to stop me, he could have. I live in the countryside. Me and my brother were walking back home, and it was a few minutes past midnight. There is no houses beside where we live, just fields, bushes, and trees. We were walking, and I felt like something was wrong. I felt like something was watching us, but I didn't think too much of it. Then we heard a noise, and I can't explain it because it was nothing that I had heard before. My brother said it was a faraway gunshot, and I just believed him. He later said that he just said it to calm me down. We kept walking with the flashlight on, and he put some music on to try and make me calm. At one point, I look on my right, and I see this flashlight, like a person was holding it, but you could clearly see there was no one holding it. My brother turned off the flashlight, and we kept looking at it. The light turned into two, and it seemed like it was a car which turned toward us. The light went over us like somebody was pointing flashlights. We panicked, but didn't move. A few seconds later, the lights disappeared. We started to walk faster towards our house, but coming over the hill, we seen this creature on the left side of the road, just completely still. My brother didn't wear glasses at the time, and he said he just saw something like an orb changing forms, but I was wearing glasses, and what I seen still makes me want to puke. I saw a luminescent humanoid, like being, which was something I never saw before. The thing started changing its forms and became something like a fox, going from one side of the road to the other. At this point, we were freaking out. I started to run towards the house as it was just a few meters away, but my brother stopped me to calm me down as I was shocked. When this happened, we were in our driveway, and I was with my back to it. He was holding my shoulders, telling me to calm down, but then he looked towards the darkness, and he ran away. I didn't have the balls to look back, so I ran after him and towards the door. He gave me the key, and I tried to open the door with my hands, shaking, which was absolutely hard. He said that he had seen the creature standing up, and that he looked like a man, but said it wasn't a man at all. Did anybody have any encounters like this? This happened last night, and I still can't explain what happened. I'm shocked. Some context. This happened like 10 years ago, on a hill southwest from Columbia. I'm skeptical about a lot of things, but this, I'm absolutely sure what I saw there was real. I was camping with my Boy Scout troop in a not-so-friendly place. Very, very hot. Really rough terrain. Awfully humid. Our troop was more likely military service than scout life. It was kind of far away from the main road, and the main base was in a tree-covered hill. I think that could be worth noted that it is less than 5 kilometers from an indigenous sacred site known as the Sacred Territory of the Creator, and probably it is a sacred site to, I don't know, since the tribes that inhabited the area were forced by the Spanish to abandon their belief, traditions, and language, so there's a lot of things we don't know about them, even I being a descendant of them. It was 3 p.m., and we sent 3 people to do the dishes after lunch. There was a small lagoon 5 to 10 minutes downhill. It shouldn't take more than a half an hour for them to be back. An hour passes. They haven't came back. Knowing them, surely they're just having a trivial and boring gossip conversation. But as a patrol leader, I have to call them back. They didn't respond to whistles, so I personally went downhill to find them. The way to the lagoon is mostly a 2.5-foot path between a steep hill and a dry river with dense vegetation and closed curves. I was walking carelessly until I noticed something behind a curve. At first, I thought it was a really massive vulture, but I felt uneasy, so I started going back in silence until I stepped over a dry branch. After the crackling, the thing extended its wings, showing a very muscular humanoid back, and then a head that watched me. Then it took off with a sound more like a helicopter than a bird. Nonsense, I thought. There must be a rational explanation. Maybe it was just my imagination. I arrived to the lagoon and effectively, they were having the most boring and dumb of conversations. I told them to pack everything and started going back to the campsite when all of the troop came out of the tree-covered area. The lagoon is in a clear, and told me that I was taking too long. My encounter with the Birdman shouldn't have taken me more than 5 seconds, or so I thought. Anyway, there was a very cocky boy in the troop that said, "I'll go front," and entered alone in the woods. 5 seconds later, I heard the same helicopter-like sound, and the boy came running from the woods, hyperventilating. "Scouter, I saw a man with wings." Of course, everybody laughed, but I didn't say a word. Hi. I've got kind of a strange thing that's bugged me for going on probably 10 years now. So, growing up, I always felt like my parents' house was haunted. I always experienced weird things, seen shadows, and just felt uneasy. I also experienced sleep paralysis very frequently. I didn't know what it was back then, and I thought I was being specifically targeted. At night, it was like a black cloud hovering around the ceiling of the bedrooms, and I kind of remember seeing eyes. I also always got a very uncomfortable feeling going down into the basement and coming back up, like the black cloud from the nighttime was chasing me up the stairs or something. Anyway, these were quote-unquote normal experiences for me growing up, as they were so frequent. However, there was this one time that really freaked me out, and I cannot for the life of me find any kind of information on it. So, what happened was, I was about 16 years old enough to drive anyways. My parents were out in town for the night, and I'd met them for a bit on my way home from work, and then proceeded to go home myself. It was wintertime, and to save heat, we had blocked off the second story of our house. I had to get something that was in my upstairs bedroom, so I opened the partition we had blocking off the stairs. When I opened the partition, there was this thing sitting on the stairs. The best way I can describe it was kind of like a gargoyle. It was hunched over and just sitting there on the stairs, eye level. It was big, adult-sized, but scrawny, dark, had wings. I can't recall if it made a noise. I freaked out and ran and locked myself in another room while I called my parents. I was in full panic mode. I had never seen it before or since. It still bugs me to this day. I remember it so vividly. And being that it was about 10 years ago, my younger sister has since described something similar. I had never told her the story before. I have searched and searched, and the only things I can find are things about the Mothman or about gargoyles outside. Anyway, I thought I'd share because it still bugs me. I'm wondering if anyone else has experienced something similar. My parents don't believe in me or are just in denial of whatever is going on there, but I know what I saw. Well, after my Nymphs Fairy story, a lot of people have asked me to give more, so there's a lot of you who won't believe me, but my village is a freaking supernatural place with weird things happening over the years, and there was even a UFO crash. You can all search it on Google. My village is Atalanti, Atalanti, named after the Greek Amazon, and it was all over the news back in 1990 when the weird object landed. But let's get started. My first story. While my great-grandfather, from my grandfather's side, was young, he was working for someone who had sheep, and one night, one of the sheeps went nuts. So during the night while they were asleep, they heard some noises, and they woke up to find the sheep having a saddle on and walking. They tried to stop it, but it was like it didn't listen. None of the sheeps ever did this before. So when the sheep turned around, it didn't really look like a sheep anymore, but something else. Like the voice was deeper, and it was like it had walked on two legs. The face was like distorted, and it was definitely not white anymore. My great-grandfather was so scared after he run and never worked with this guy again. Story number 2. There are a lot of rumors about people using dark magic and evil things, and a guy my grandfather knew didn't believe these things were real. He kept walking around telling this to the locals at the cafes, and a weird old dude had heard him, and he was like, "You'll see tonight." So he sent a weird freaking donkey to him that kept kicking him at night until he begged to stop and said he believed in demonic entities. Story number 3. Now this is a neighbor of my grandfather while they were in their 20s. He was a man who went to church very often, always praying, always believing in God, and it was like the devil tricked him every day. There was a boy who kept calling him at nights at the stairwell of his house. He asked him to go outside and play, and after a while, when he didn't join him, the boy turned into a black dog. That happened for a long time until they called a priest, and it stopped. Story number 4. This happened to one of my uncles. He came back from work late at night. They were working as farmers with clover. Anyway, there used to be a small and narrow street that led to the house faster, but no one went there during late night. It was a crossroad, and there was a small faucet there too, but everyone avoided it after midnight. Well, my uncle decided to head faster home, rather than to stay safe, and something invisible attacked him. It grabbed him by the neck and pushed him down. He immediately started saying a prayer, the Lord's Prayer, and the thing left. Possibly a demon. A priest had later told him to never use that street. And guess what? The street doesn't exist anymore. There's a deserted house there now, and I don't want to know what's hiding in there. Story number 5. My aunt used to hear every night a weird banging outside of their window when they moved in their new home, like someone was chopping wood. They often went out to see if there was someone, but no one was there, and apparently they learned that they have killed soldiers at the place during World War II. Crazy. Story number 3. The alien UFO crash. So, during 1990 in the summer, there were a lot of UFO sightings all around Greece, and one actually crashed at a hill next to my village. Story number 7. My cousin said at their clover field once that something had landed again, because there was a circle and it was like burned, and for literally about 2 years nothing grew on that place again. Story number 8. When we went with my grandfather to buy cheese from a guy he knows, we walked into his farm. I looked around the walls and it was full of lashes, like the whips that hit the horses with, but some of them were a bit too much. They seemed super heavy, and I asked my grandfather, "What's that?" I was like 9 to 10, but I have never seen that type of lash before. It didn't look normal. Anyway, my grandfather told me to shush, and he said we'll talk home. So, when we went home, he told me that man calls demons and hits them. He asked them who they hurt, and then hits them so hard with those whips. So, I was like, oh, he's nice then. And my grandfather said immediately, he hasn't been in church for many, many years, because what he's doing is against God. Even though he hits them, he still uses dark magic to call them in. Well guys, these are just my stories, and I have a lot more, about ghosts and saints appearing at churches, and so many kids I know have their own stories from their grandparents. I swear, my village, and especially central Greece, there's something there. Some people even claim to have seen satyrs at the ancient place of Delphi, that they're weird electromagnetic powers, and don't get me started about Mount Olympus. Anyway, hope you enjoy these. So, I live in Arizona. Over the weekend, I went camping with my fiancée and her sister and husband. My fiancée is 4 months pregnant. We had a great time camping and fishing. I love fishing, and it's been one of my best coping mechanisms since I got out of the army. Well, Saturday afternoon, we all went fishing on my soon-to-be brother-in-law's boat, had a blast and caught some fish, then headed back to camp. That night, I felt like going fishing again, because fishing at night is usually a good time, but no one else wanted to go, and my fiancée was actually already in the tent, getting ready for sleep. So I decided to go by myself and fish from the shore of the lake. This was around 10:30 p.m. Well, I was out there for a good 45 minutes with no odd interruptions and just enjoying the peace and quiet, when I hear a loud snap about 30 meters away. As a former infantryman, I've been taught to observe my surroundings and always be on my guard. This snap was odd. It wasn't like an ordinary twig snap, more like a large fallen branch. At first I'm thinking bear, as that would be the only logical explanation based on weight that could break something that large. So I'm looking in that general direction for a good 30 seconds after the snap and hear nothing. Then it happens. I hear footsteps, followed by the most foul and oddly unique smell hitting my nose. These steps are most certainly bipedal, and I just had the strongest intuition and gut feeling it wasn't anyone in my family, but something dangerous. Like worse than what I faced overseas. Dangerous, the feeling of fear I felt was unrivaled at the moment. So I say out loud, "Who's there?" But there's all of a sudden silence for a good minute. Then it happens. I see something breaking the tree line about 15 feet from the shore of the lake. It's on 4 legs, which freaked me out because the walking after the snap was definitely a 2-legged creature, and an extremely pale with odd fur patches covering its body. It looked like a malnourished wolf or coyote, but with a smaller head. Like the head was half developed. We locked eyes, and again, it's like a telekinetic wave of fear washes over me, but I stood my ground. This thing then does what made me 100% sure it wasn't a normal animal. It talks. First, the most creepy laughter, almost like a child's mixed with a demon's, which is the best way I can describe it. And then it says to me, while simply walking away now, "Danger. You are in danger, all of you." Followed by more laughter. I stood frozen, watching it as it walked parallel to the lake until it was out of sight. I was then hit with an overwhelming feeling of dread, and immediately thought to check on my fiancé and soon-to-be family members because the feeling inside me was so strong that they were now in extreme danger too. I got back to camp, and everybody was asleep. I didn't tell any of them what happened as to not alarm them, and I didn't expect them to believe me. If I did, because I wouldn't believe myself if I hadn't seen and heard it. The worst part is, we have now been home for a full 24 hours, but that feeling of me and my fiancé being in danger keeps echoing in my mind. I was taught never to run or surrender, and to my face, my enemies head on. And this feeling I have is almost like a life or death thing. Kill it and be safe, or feel like me and my fiancé are going to die for God knows how long. I have training and have dealt with enemies before. Should I go back alone and prepared? What should I do? My fight or flight response hasn't been shut off since we've gotten home, and most of me wants to go back, prepared, and face this thing, or try and find something, which I doubt would be an issue, based on this weird feeling I have inside of me. Honestly, everyone, what should I do? Because I can't get this creature's words or thoughts, whatever it is projected out onto me, out of my head, much less the words I actually heard. Some of the stories I have recently heard have had a skinwalker tapping on someone's window, and then they look and see it there. I was being paranoid and imagining, what if that happened to me? I don't know if anyone else has had this feeling, but I feel like I can sense presences around me. It's weird, but right now I'm on my bed with my window right next to me. If it was open, I could hop out in just 2 seconds. And it's like I project this detection thing outwards, and I don't feel anything. It definitely puts me at ease. Of course, that could just be my overactive imagination. But if I ever feel like I feel a presence, I'm going to sleep in my bathroom and hope for the best. That aside, over 2, maybe even 3 years, I think I was in my room, and it was late. My brother was there with me, and we were playing games together, or something. Maybe he was actually asleep. I don't remember for sure. It might have happened 2 nights in a row. but I heard this tapping on the window. Now, mind you, the tapping sounds like it was from about the middle of the window, which I'd guess is around 6 to 8 feet high, maybe. I had thought maybe it was pebbles being thrown at the window, or something tapping on it maybe. I don't know why I didn't think of it before, but unless somebody had brought pebbles from somewhere else, there aren't tiny pebbles anywhere near my house. I was trying to record it, but I remember that every time I did it, it stopped for a while. Either that or it couldn't be heard. I don't know if somebody else or somehow skinwalkers make you feel like you need to check, but I felt no compulsion whatsoever to pull back the curtains. I think the most terrifying thing about doing that would be the fact that something would have to be close enough to your window for the light inside to reflect off of it, for it to even be visible, and it would be all you can see with blinding darkness behind it. I don't know what else it could be. There's a possibility it might have been one of my older brothers, but I don't think so, and I don't even remember for sure if he was there at the time. If so, he was in this shed room thing I have outside the house, and not with me. What do you think? Do skinwalkers actually ever tap on windows at all? I made a post here yesterday, or maybe the day before, about a possible sound that was a skinwalker. I don't think that was one. I definitely feel like this has a higher possibility. Again, I live in the southern part of the US. Don't know if any skinwalker sightings or encounters from here are real. I do remember 2 stories that I heard on YouTube from my state. Whether it was or not, I'm wondering if it was, and because I never pulled back the curtains, it lost interest? My brother did hear the tapping, by the way. It wasn't loud or anything. It was loud enough for me to hear over whatever we were doing. He didn't hear it at first, and then I told him to be quiet when it started again, and then he heard it. I know that in a lot of the stories, people often feel they're being watched or something. I didn't feel that. Maybe there was the smallest feeling of there's something out there, but it could have just been me freaking out. Also, I just heard this story earlier, and I'll make it short, but this guy, supposedly a skinwalker, walked over to their campfire in human form, and he had stared at them all while they were asking him if he was okay and what he wanted, or something like that. As I'm typing this, I might have just heard a small tap on my window. If I hear one again, I'm leaving this room. Anyway, one of the kids asked him his name, and he stared at him for a bit, and then said, "That's none of your business." Then he left. Is there some significance to their name? I remember reading on here a link or somewhere that they don't have names or something like that. I don't know. Hi everyone. I would like to share this story. I've heard about 2 men who supposedly lived in the Develi's cave in Penteli, Athens, Greece. Some people from the area have said they've encountered them close to the forest and the cave. Well, I need to tell you that there's a lot of theories about this cave, about other dimensions, and the fact that you can actually travel somewhere else through here. Even UFO sightings, people losing their memory. There's the phenomenon of negative gravity, which is amazing. There's so much electromagnetic activity. So people who claim seeing them said the men always walk with their hands behind their back, and whoever saw them thought they didn't have hands. But if you took a look from the back, you could see their hands were bird-like, like claws. They never spoke, almost like they couldn't, and they were very tall and pale. Now, could this really be just a spooky story? But if it's not, what do you think they could be? Could they really be from a different dimension? Or they're entities? Or just people who were born like this? There's also sightings of angels and ghosts on the area, so maybe it's all illusions from the huge electromagnetic energy field. Also, another fact about the cave is that the compasses go crazy there, and during 1977, they said the army actually did some experiments there, and after the 1990s Satanists actually went there for, their satanic rituals. I was on the Little Miami bike trail heading back to Murrow from Oregonia, mile marker 23.5. It was Sunday, April 12th, around 5 in the afternoon. Since the COVID restrictions were enacted a week or two prior, The trail had become so crowded every day of the week. However, a cold front came in, and it was cool, cloudy day, and very few people on the trail. Maybe 15 to 20 riders encountered from Oregonia to Kings Mill. Well, maybe more, but not bad. I'm retired and ride this route nearly daily, weather permitting. So, after passing under the former Jeremiah Morrow Bridge, I-71, over Little Miami River, there's a long, gentle arc in the trail. I haven't seen a soul since I turned around at Wilmington Road. I'm cruising. It's nice and quiet, when suddenly I heard a loud knock. So distinct that I instantly said in my head, that was a knock. It came from atop the hill to the east. I pondered all of the conditions, kids playing, not, cold, remote, and they don't play in woods anymore. Adults messing around, maybe? But how would they know I was there? Natural, very doubtful. I'm nearly 68 and never heard anything so crisp, clearly, like a Louisville slugger full speed against a barkless, solid ash tree, or so I imagined. There, that's what happened. I look online to see if any Bigfoot sightings had been reported in this area, and found none. I stored the incident away until last weekend when I was talking to my son. He's 46 in May, and I raised him near Murrow, abutting the former Frisch Farms in the 3C Highway. Our school district includes the Mainville area, and one of his good friends lived on a hillside at a 90-degree curve on Sickby Road. His friend, Chris Flick's older brother, told Nick, 20 years ago, he and his dad both saw a Bigfoot walking through the woods on the opposing hillside 2 different times. Nick said he never related this until he told me, because of my knock story, of course. He said he'll never forget it, and because of his story, I tell you my story. I was driving down Willard Road around 5 p.m. as I came around the last right-hand corner, looking toward the straightaway to the junction with Cook Underwood Road. I saw a black object in the road. I thought it was a bear, and the largest bear I have ever seen. It took up the whole left lane of the road, and it was huge. It looked like the butt was raised up. I figured it could be a 600-pound bear in my mind. Then I saw this commotion going on, like something moving up and down, all black. A bear will run or lumber across the road. At the time, I thought I have never seen a bear do this. I thought this could be several deer or elk walking in the road. I was confused about all the motion going on. Then, as it approached, the creature approached the edge of the bank. It popped up. I yelled out, "It's a man!" What is a man doing out here in the woods this time of night? It stepped onto the bank and walked into the woods. As my mind was trying to figure out what I saw the whole body and the head. The right leg stepped onto the bank, left arm back, no hat, no coat, no clothes. There was no snout or ears like a bear. Yes, a cone-like head, tall, arms longer, legs bulky. My headlights lit it up. By the time I passed it, it had disappeared into the woods, and by the time I reached Cook Underwood Road, about 600 feet, I knew what I saw, but was still just trying to process it. I went back on Sunday to see if I could see prints, but it had rained hard all night, and I saw no prints. I still see the creature in my mind. Later, as my mind was processing what I saw, I knew it had to be arms and legs going up and down as it crossed the road, and also it was actually crawling, then stood up by the bank, but it was so fast like it popped up. Still hard for me to believe what I saw, but I believe it was a sasquatch. I also now believe as I approached it when my headlights came upon it, it turned back towards the headlights and scrunched its face because the headlights were in its eyes, then turned and faced into the woods and walked off. Hey guys, Bradley here. So recently, I posted a story about a supposed skinwalker sighting that I had had. A lot of people started mentioning something called a DOGMAN, which a few believe is what I saw. And if I'm honest, I'm not sure if I disagree, but at the same time, I kinda do agree. It's kind of like one of those, I know I saw something and believe it's this, but at the same time, it looks like this kind of situation. Which is why I'm up where in the same spot where I saw this skinwalker or dogman. Please know that I will be documenting this live as it happens. Unfortunately, I don't have very good reception up here, so I'm currently typing in my notes and will post this later when I get back home. I will be updating this document every 45 minutes to an hour. I got one of my friends up here. We'll call him Luke with me for safety. He might put some updates in here or there, but he said it's my story, so he'll leave most of it to me. Also, I will be mostly using my voice with these updates, and I won't be doing them every time. Only when the situation requires, like if we need to be attentive to what's around us. So, without further ado, let's do this. 12:30 a.m. So we have just made it back to the so-called broccoli tree, which is the tree me and my uncle hung out in all the time before he joined the army. I'm not surprised that everybody except the tarp is almost completely gone from rot and bugs. I'll just pull everything out that's rotted and toss it aside. I did bring up a sleeping bag with me, so that me and Luke can use that as a blanket to sit on. I'm going to go ahead and take a small nap. I'll update when I wake up. Will be about 1 hour from now. 1:10 a.m. Little before an hour, but Luke just woke me up to some noises nearby. Could just be a deer, or maybe some other animal. I'm not really sure. Okay, it stopped moving. I think it's on the other side of the tree, where the trunk is. Wait, that's definitely not an animal. Guys, we just heard this thing, whatever it is, growl a really low growl. Almost like it's in pain. Okay, it's been about 2 minutes. This thing is still on the other side of the tree. Wait. It just took off into the woods. It sounded to be on 2 feet. Guys, I don't know what the hell that was, but it definitely was not a human or any known animal. This thing sounds massive. Okay, I'm going to take a little peek outside the tarp. Okay, it seems to have gone away. I'm going to step out and start exploring some more. We'll update soon. 2:30 a.m. Okay, so we've just made it back to the tree. So, there are definitely more than one of these things because we can hear them communicating back and forth from hilltop to hilltop. Seems to be about 2 or maybe 3. Still haven't laid eyes on one of them yet. Luke is going to take his nap now. I have to watch. What is it about these woods? Just the energy around them. I mean, hell, I've had 2 different experiences up here. One of them was a Bigfoot. I just don't understand why. Yet at the same time, I don't know what I'm trying to understand. It just seems like something isn't right about the woods. How can 2 completely different legends that many believe to be nothing more than a hoax exist in the same woods? Could it have been a skinwalker all along who shape-shifted into a Bigfoot? Or is there an skinwalker and a Bigfoot up here? These are things I need to know. I have to know the truth. 3:30 a.m. So Luke has just woken up from sleeping. It seems kind of fitting that he woke up at this time, because 3 a.m. is the devil's hour. Maybe something will happen, and I pray it doesn't cause us harm. I need another nap. I'll be back later. Hello y'all, Luke speaking. No, that's not my real name. I asked Bradley how to do this, and he said to just say what's on your mind and anything that happens. Anyway, it's really creepy up here. Like no joke, it feels like I'm playing a real-life version of Dead by Daylight. It's got me on the edge like crazy. I would say I'm a little scared, but at the same time, I do have Bradley. I know he didn't mention having a gun with us. I guess it's just one of those minor details that some people sometimes skip over. We've heard of a lot of noises up here, some of which could explain right of the bats and others we had listened to for a little while to figure out what it was. And then we have the ones we totally cannot explain. We've heard almost like a howl, but it's at like a much lower tone, with more bass to it per se. It could be what we're up here looking for. It's all quiet right now, but That can change any moment. I could feel that something's about to happen. 3:45 a.m. Guys, that came out of nowhere. What Luke tells me is that we're putting on an entry or something, and then all of a sudden, we came under attack. It seems to have calmed down and, guys, something's on the other side of the tarp. I don't know what it is, but it's on 2 feet. It has red eyes. I have to keep my voice low right now, so I apologize if the microphone doesn't pick up everything I'm saying. It's right there, right there. I know now to be quiet. I'm scared. You gotta be quiet, bro. It'll hear us. Dude, I think it went away. Go look. No, you go look. Bradley, you're the closest to the gun. Go look. Fine, I'll look. Wait right there. Okay, I think it's gone. Let's get the hell out of here. 4:25 a.m. Okay, so I'm back home. Luke just left. Oh boy, guys, what a night. It's been crazy. A lot of unexplained stuff happened. I'm also kind of dumb. My little dumbass didn't record or take any pictures like I had told myself I would do. I feel stupid now. I can already see the people in the comments saying it's fake. Anyway, I believe that's it. All I have to do is copy and paste this, and I hope you all enjoyed and have a great day.